The appraisal came in low. Have you heard that before? What the heck does that mean? What does that mean? The appraisal came in low. Did it come in high? Did it come in low? Did it come in the middle? Did it come in just right? What the heck does that mean? The appraisal came in low. Low in comparison to what? I want to read, that language has always bothered me. Apparently it bothered my guest. And we'll talk about that in just a second. But let me read part of this. This was a LinkedIn post. I'm not going to tell you who wrote it. And I don't think it was malicious. I really don't. I think it was an agent trying to be helpful to other agents or consumers of what maybe you could do if, let me rephrase it, if the appraised value was not what you had expected, maybe you felt that it should be more, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, I don't like using the term the appraisal came in low, but it certainly gets your attention, and it got the attention of this post. Appraisal came in low, now what? Here's what it actually means for your home sale. When a home appraisal comes in below the purchase price, the lender usually won't base the mortgage on the higher number, which is true. Generally speaking, they're going to lend on the sale price or the appraised value, whichever the two is lower. Okay. That can trigger appraisal contingency or financing contingency, and the deal may need to be renegotiated. Common next steps when the appraisal is low. Ugh. Stop saying that. Seller lowers the price to the appraised value. Okay. Buyer brings cash to cover the appraisal gap. I don't like the term appraisal gap either. Both sides meet in the middle. Okay. There's nothing wrong if a buyer wants to pay more than what the appraiser appraised it for. They certainly can do that. Request a reconsideration of value with stronger comps. Buyer cancels if the contract allows. The best way to avoid pricing your home based on real comparables, comps. I like that. The real estate agent is saying price the house right. Current market condition and appraiser-supported data, not just the highest online estimate. Save this post and share it with anyone. Again, I don't think that was malicious. I think that agent was trying to be helpful, gave some good recommendations, have an appraiser do a pre-listing appraisal. So, if they were being malicious, I don't think they would have said that. Well, I've got a special guest on, and we're going to get her opinion. I'm super excited. I know what her opinion is. She wrote a response to that. And I may share that with you in just a moment, but I'm happy to actually bring her on. So please stick around, join me for the podcast, and meet my special guest.
Are you an accomplished instructor or outstanding supervisor in the real estate appraisal field? Join Melissa Bond, the industry's leader in practical appraiser training across the nation. This is your opportunity to earn additional income while making a lasting impact on the appraisal profession. Share your knowledge, mentor the next generation of appraisers, and expand your professional reach by helping to shape the future of this industry. Contact Melissa Bond at mbond@ceinstructor.com or 601-916-6501 and turn your expertise into opportunity.
Hi, this is Bryan Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you as always by the great folks over at Appraiser eLearning. You need some education? Check us out at appraiserelearning.com. You'll be glad you did. In fact, you can watch these episodes on YouTube. And if you're watching or click over to YouTube and decide to watch this particular broadcast, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And that way you'll be notified when a new edition is available, because these come out before we blast it on email, and you'll kind of get the access for the special folks that subscribe. You'll also be in the know if we have a special news bulletin or alert or breaking news or something going shaky on in the profession, and we want to let you know really, really quick. You would be advised of that the minute we drop one. So go ahead and hit the subscribe button now, and then you'll be in the know. I'm super excited to have my special guest. She's a friend. She's a longtime appraiser. She's actually the appraiser of the year, um, Miss Kathy Harper. Welcome, Kathy. How are you?
Hi, Brian. I'm good. And you?
I'm doing great. Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Happy almost New Year to you. 26 is almost here.
Oh, my goodness. It is indeed. So, Kathy, before we dive into this topic and maybe expand on a couple of others if time permits, tell my viewers and listeners a little bit about Kathy Harper.
Kathy Harper. I am a certified residential real estate appraiser in South Texas. I am prior military, and so this is a second career for me. I've been doing this for 22 years, and I really enjoy it. I enjoy the analysis. Enjoy the interaction. So it's made for me. I'm passionate about it, trying to do it the best we can.
You were just recognized as appraiser of the year. Talk about that a little bit.
That was quite overwhelming, quite flattered because our peers voted. And so it was very flattering. I think that our exposure in our industry helps with those sort of things, that you're trying to help others and people notice. And that's what I felt like. It's those times I spend trying to help and guide have been recognized. And that's very appreciative. And it makes me believe that we're making a difference together by sharing with each other.
And I want to get to the meat of this, but one last thing. Talk about, I mean, your resume we could talk about all day, but talk about your involvement and the way you give back, because you do, and you should be proud of that. Your involvement with state association, national association, NAR, things like that. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I found that there were some gaps right in our industry and what appraisers were thinking and saying and doing and what we had to think and say and do. So I kind of crossed the aisle, so to speak, and I did get my sales license and became a member of my local board. I first started in committees. I served on the MLS board for 6 years, and now I'm on the association board. And the interaction with sales agents and brokers is really helpful for all of us that are going through the processes. I then went on to state level, serving on committees there for both the association, the Texas Association of Realtors, and the National Association of Realtors. And when you get involved there, you will find that there is just a large gap. We need to speak more. We need to work together more. So that's really been helpful, giving back. I feel like people want to hear what we have to say. So we have to get in there and help them know where we are, what we do, and why we do it. That's the biggest thing. When I tell them things that my opinion of value is on the life of the loan, sales agents get overwhelmed. I've had an attorney say, "Whoa, talk about keeping a work file." Yeah. And it's true. It's that we have to be able to support our opinions until that loan's paid off. If they foreclose, so to speak, then they can come back and find fault. So we have to hold solid on what we opine, and that's the difficult thing sometimes with data and that sort of thing. So bottom line is pitching in and getting involved has really been helpful and rewarding, because people are learning and listening, and we're working together better.
Kathy, are you a real estate agent as well?
Yes, sir. I am. I haven't sold a thing. I became an agent to learn more, and it really helped me understand why there's a gap. Yeah. Because there's not a lot of education in our process for real estate agents.
So I have a real estate license too, and I don't do a lot of that. I do a little bit. Mostly was when I buy property, I can represent myself, right? But I sell a few properties here and there, and we'll be selling my mom's house next year, and maybe some of the others. But yeah, a lot. We talked before the broadcast briefly, because as my listeners know, this isn't scripted. You don't know what I'm about to ask you, but we did chat briefly about what is a realtor, and that a lot of people don't understand that. Do you want to talk on that real quick?
That is something that I think has kind of become more and more important to realize, is that becoming a realtor means that you are a member of a trade association. You are a member of the National Association of Realtors. And there is verbiage in there that will tell you what you have to do to become a realtor, and it is to hold a sales license or a certified licensed appraiser license. So those of us that are members of NAR are all in fact realtors. Therefore, we follow the same code of ethics. We are bound by the same rules and guidances. So I've pushed that narrative so that we understand that we are on the same page in many, many aspects.
Yeah. And I don't think most appraisers are really, really in tune with that really understand that. You know, you can be a licensed real estate agent. Some states call them brokers. You know, for me, a broker here is above a real estate agent, but there are brokerage states where the term broker is synonymous with real estate agent. So, you know, depending on where you're sitting in the world, but there are real estate agents that aren't realtors, and there are appraisers that are realtors. And I don't mean hold a real estate license in addition to the appraisal like Kathy and I mean, if you're an appraiser and you don't hold a real estate license and you join a local board of realtors, you are a realtor. and a lot of folks don't know that. Let's get to the meat of this conversation, because I know you and I could talk all day. So I'm gonna read what you wrote, or at least part of it. Okay. So Kathy Harper, Appraiser of the Year, said, I appreciate your discussion with appraisers here. I, like others, just cringe when we hear appraisals come in low or appraisal issues. And you and I are alike in that regard. I would encourage you to meet appraisers in your area. Encourage lunch and learns. Encourage your local board to bring more appraisers into the association on committees, especially the MLS, or maybe even professional development. We will all benefit from collaborating, working together, and teaching others. And I think you just on this little printout, you got 4 replies, 6 likes, and the conversation went on. And most people accepted that warmly. But tell the world now, what do you mean when you say because we hear the term appraisal came in low all the time. And we've heard the new term appraisal gap, which I hate that one too. You said, I, like others, just cringe. Tell me about that. What makes you cringe about it?
Well, sometimes I'll say it just forthright. An appraisal is an opinion of value. This is my opinion. And I've spoken a little bit to how much I have to do to support that opinion and how long that opinion is alive. So it can't come in low because it's my opinion.
Right.
So it can't be a low appraisal. It is an appraisal. I've kind of turned it around to, well, the appraisal did not support contract price. We can say that, and that's a valid statement.
Maybe we ought to say the sale price came in high. Maybe that's the new 2026 version. Hey, right. Dude, yes, the appraisal didn't come in low. Your sale price came in high.
Well, and the other thing that's said all the time is it didn't appraise.
Yeah. It did appraise. It did appraise. This is what you didn't like it, but it did appraise. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, that's the cringe thing. Is my opinion. It can't be low. It's my opinion, and it's supported.
Right. And you certainly are entitled to go get another opinion, right? And I believe this agent gave some pretty good recommendations. Seller lower the price, buyer brings the cash to cover the difference. I'm going to call it the difference. She said appraisal gap. Both sides meet in the middle. I had one myself, Kathy, and this has been a long time ago. And I grew up in this subdivision, and my viewers and listeners have heard me talk about thoroughbred acres forever because I use it a lot. And there's a Gulfstream model over there, and there were tons of sales of them. And I appraised it, and it was about $5,000 less than their contract price. Mm-hmm. And the buyer actually called me. A lot of times the buyers are like, oh, good, because now I can renegotiate a better deal. And I don't want to pay more. But the buyer called me. And she said, Bryan, we've been looking for months and months and months and months. This house meets all our needs. I don't even have to change the wallpaper. I'm happy with I'd change this wallpaper. But we had a very good conversation. This is the buyer. And she said, I just think it's worth that and I'm willing to do it. And I said, well, then buy it. I said, you have to understand, in order for me to sign my name to this thing and sleep at night, I've got to have support for my opinions and conclusions. And although you don't get a written guarantee when you buy a piece of real estate, generally speaking, real estate historically has been a good investment. Generally speaking, they go up. Don't anybody yell at me. I know they can go down and sideways. That area has been great historically. It might be worth that in a few years or in a year or in 6 months. Who knows? But today, this is my opinion. And she's like, well, I don't know what to do. And I said, well, that's your business decision. So what they ended up doing, Kathy, they met in the middle. They went back to the seller and the seller said, I'm not reducing. And they said, well, we want the house, but we don't want to pay more than it's worth. And they each gave $2,500. They went up, they paid $2,500 over what I appraised it for. And the seller came down and, it all worked out. But I was able to have that grown-up professional conversation with the buyer. Generally, it's the seller that's mad, right? Is that been your experience? The buyer's okay with paying a lesser price. It's the seller that gets mad at us, right, and thinks we're dumb.
That's exactly right, and that's where it comes into us teaching agents, and so that they can teach their clients and they can help their clients know what to expect. I've had those same kind of stories where a buyer will say, I'm emotionally involved and I'm still going to pay this for this property, but I appreciate knowing what is supported in the market. And so that's exactly right. That's their money. As long as it's their money, right? That was a cash buyer. But I did a private appraisal for that cash buyer, which is another tool in our toolbox, right, to help people in the process.
And so they knew what they were getting into. They said we know, but we appreciate knowing what it's worth as of today.
Exactly. And so, yes, I think that's what I've had too, is the seller gets aggravated, and we can talk about why, all that stuff. They're emotionally involved. It's a house they love. They put their heart and soul into it. And, they believe, for whatever information they have, that it is worth more. So it's a tricky place. And as long as we don't talk about value numbers and how we came to those value conclusions, we can say, well, this is what I was able to support in the market. But having said that, it's good to hear also, well, we looked all over and this was the only one that we found that had this amenity.
Right.
Right. Like, that's why it's nice to talk to buyer's agents before we do the appraisal, because this amenity may be a one-off. Say they're the only people in the world that wanted that. Or if we look a little deeper, we can find out, like, well, wow, I didn't think about that angle, right? It didn't have this or didn't have that. So that's part of the market. That's part of our market analysis, is looking at those things. So knowing that stuff ahead of time is, of course, more helpful, because that's what I'll ask buyer's agents. What else did you look at? What else did you show them? In addition to where
I just wrote that down. I just literally wrote that down. I was going to ask you about that.
Yes. So that's the thing that we can teach, right?
So somebody told me that years ago, and I thought, what a great strategy. They'd call a listing agent, or they may call a buyer's agent on a particular sale, and say, hey, you sold this house to this person. What other houses were they looking at in comparison to this as a consideration before they decide to buy this one? Because that's gauging the market. What at least in that particular buyer, doesn't mean you and I will opine that, but in that one buyer situation, these were potential comps, because they were considering those just like they considered the one they bought, right? So, hey, in your experience, and I know markets are different all across the country, but in your experience, do most listing agents down by you, do they do a competitive market analysis or a BPO when they're trying to price something, or are they just shooting from the hip? Are they running Zillow and say, okay, I got to list it around that? What's been your experience on that?
In Texas, it's mandated when they sign a listing agreement to have provided a CMA the seller.
Great.
So sometimes they're dated though, right? They listed the house 3 or 4 months ago. And so the CMA may have changed a little bit, but it's always good to know where they started from. Where did they come from? Same with the buyer's agent. They should be doing a CMA for their buyer to say, okay, this is what the market's telling us. This is where it falls in that comparative market analysis. So yes, in Texas, we've got some pretty good rules that help the whole process so that the consumer, let's talk about consumer confidence and transparency, right? So public trust, the listing agent says this is the comparative market analysis, so they determine a list price. And at that point, sometimes the seller will still want to go higher.
Sure.
And that's fine, but they know, they have the knowledge, right? They know that this is what the market's saying, and maybe theirs is going to be the one to bump it up a little bit, but they know that the thing is that they have the information that helps them understand it.
So listing agents have to do that. It's mandated before they list a property, and you said the buyer's agents really ought to as well. And I want to talk about that for a second. And I don't, this isn't about bashing real estate agents. I mean, we all got to get along, right? There historically has been kind of a love-hate relationship between appraisers and agents. And I think it's gotten better. I don't know. But do you think that the buying agents are doing that? I mean, there's even public opinion. The consumer many times are like, well, they're just trying to get it because their commission's tied to the sale price. They're just trying to sell it high so they can make more money in their pocket at the end of the day. And maybe that's true for some folks. I mean, there's good and bad. There's good and bad appraisers, good and bad police officers, good and bad doctors, good and bad real estate agents, right? But in the general masses, do you think that most of them are doing their homework and trying to figure out they do have a fiduciary responsibility to that buyer. Do you think most of them are doing the CMA or BPO or even a down and dirty version of it to try to get the best price for their client, the buyer in this instance?
I think that the good ones are, just like you said, there's good ones, and those are the ones that get the repeat clients, right? They sold with this sales agent that they felt did them the right job for them. They were after their best interest, and they did note their fiduciary responsibility. But like you said, good and bad. I will tell you, the more you talk to agents, the good ones come out of the good ones rise to talk to you. The good ones want to know. They want to do a better job, so they do. So it's kind of like we don't get to talk to the ones that aren't thorough. And there's some really big groups that the brokers aren't as involved with the agents as maybe they should be. But that's why we can get out and help.
I think that's true. And what I haven't sold a lot, but I was always trying to do the best job I could for my client because I wanted repeat business, in 5 years when they buy another house, or 10 years, or when their kid buys a house, or they recommend me to somebody. It wasn't about the one transaction trying to make the most I could and put in my pocket. It was trying to do the best job I could for that particular client, so they'd remember me in the future. But I know a lot of times it's just like, hey, how much can I make, right? And I get it. I mean, we all want to make money. There's nothing wrong with that. How do you think the relationship? I said love-hate relationship. How do you think that's going nowadays? I mean, I know a lot of appraisers that didn't want to hear from an agent. If an agent calls and says, hey, I did a CMA, can I give you some of the sales I used? I don't know if they'll be helpful or not, but I took offense a little bit when somebody calls a lender even and says, hey, Brian, I got some better comps. I'm like, oh, I'm the one that decides whether or not they're comparable. So it's all about language for me. If you call and say, hey, I've got some additional sales that might help you, or I've got some sales, I welcome that. I love that. But the appraiser is the one that's ultimately going to decide if they're comparable or not. But on both sides, how do you think that's going these days in 2026? Do you think the relationships between appraisers and agents are better? Or what can we do to even improve them further?
Well, I think that, of course, in my world, I feel like they're getting better because I'm more involved with sales agents on that side of the house. So I think that is getting better. I will say that at the National Association of Realtors, they're working hard to make it better. Serving on committees there, we get exposure to other brokers and agents from across the country. And again, those are the ones that want to hear, they want to learn. So I think if we can get to those levels, and NAR is working hard on it. They're doing some webinar series to help us speak to the public as well as brokers and agents. So I think that it is getting better, and it is all about communication. Some of those cringe words will put us off a little bit, right?
Yeah,
and then some of us were trained like, oh, you can't take comps from them, and I'm with you. I want you to call them sales. That's another cringe word because I have to determine it as comparable. Right. But I think that it is getting better, and communication is certainly the key. Communication with the desire to work together.
I agree.
That's the key, I think.
And let's talk a little bit, because you gave me a little preview. Yeah, and appraisers work all the time, especially if they're individuals, running their own shop. I mean, they're president and janitor both at the same time, so they got to do everything. And I've been in that world. I work on it in a team now. Every business I have has teammates, because I don't know, maybe I'm getting lazy. I just don't want to do the work anymore. I don't know what it is, but I like being part of a team. So I have a few different endeavors, and everyone I have has a team. Some teams are smaller than others, but that works best for me at this point in my life. Okay, but for quite a while, I was the solo appraiser. I did everything, so I know, and I think that's the majority of appraisers out there in the country. And we were chatting, and you said something about data, access to data, and you said, if I'm working on an appraisal at 11 o'clock at night, so talk about that. I mean, if you're working on an appraisal at 11 o'clock at night and you're trying to get it done so that poof, in the morning, your client has it already, it's ready to roll, and then you hit a stumbling block. Talk about that for a minute, like we were chatting about.
I think that's where the most frustration comes in, and that's probably what got me started serving with my MLS committees and MLS boards, is I'll be in the middle of a report, and I think I have enough data to support all the things that I need to have in there to meet the GSE's requirements and requests. And then I'll come across an MLS listing that I cannot verify. The data in that listing is not accurate from what I can verify, which we have to verify every bit of data we use. And I can't really call someone at 11 p.m. and get an answer. Right. Sometimes, and you'll hear this, and sometimes in a very frustrated manner, that the agents don't call us back. Well, at 11 p.m., I'm not going to call you anyways, but I've had agents call me back 3 days later and like, that report had to go in. That's gone.
Yeah, you're a little late, bud.
Yeah, so that's why the MLS data is so very important to have it accurate. And I encourage closing remarks, because that helps us understand. I understand the MLS is a marketing tool. I do see that, but we need to take that data mostly after it closes. So closing remarks are very helpful. Like this was a rushed sale, or the homeowners had already moved and got another job and they needed to sell this. Just things that stay private, because the MLS is only accessed by license holders.
Right.
And so that won't go to the public if you just put it in the closing remarks. So that helps us a bunch. But yes, 11 o'clock at night, I'm trying to finish a report that's due, and I need to have it in the morning before I go out to visit other properties. And I can't get an answer. Yeah. I've lost that bit of information that may be very applicable, but I can't verify it. So yeah, it's difficult that way.
I just want to, let folks know the domino effect of that, because it doesn't just impact you. Right. It impacts everyone in the entire process, because now you're going to have to wait till the next day. So your completed report could have been there at 8 o'clock, opening time for the banker, and the banker could have done whatever they wanted to do. So now there's a delay. There's a delay with the lender getting it. It's a delay on possibly going to the closing table, which impacts the real estate agent. It's a delay that the consumer is not getting to close when they wanted to, which, so it impacts not only you and I, it impacts the lender, it impacts the real estate agents, and it impacts the consumers. It impacts everybody. So, yeah, having great data, getting on that board, and I know I need to wrap things up here real quick, but getting on that MLS board or the board in general on a committee, has that been helpful for you to bring the appraiser side to the story?
Absolutely. We've changed rules when I taught them things that we needed. We've changed so many rules on our MLS, and it can be a bit difficult to get your point across. And we always have to be careful that we're not only wanting to make this information for us. We have to work together. This is what the state needs for marketing, and this is what we need to support the appraisal process. But I will say that always best to leave appraisal packets at the house. What sales did you consider? Why did you consider it? You went in this house over there, and you don't want to write in the MLS that it smelled bad, but I need to know that that affected it, right? So those are the things that if you can just jot down notes on MLS listings that you looked at, and then we can have it, and we will both apologize for the appraisers that say, I don't want your data, and they'll rip it up, and we have to apologize for those folks.
Appraisers need to be more receptive to that too. I mean, you might get a packet and decide there's nothing in there of value that you can use. That's fine. Right. You don't have to be disrespectful and say, well, it's my opinion and get away from me. I mean, maybe they provide you data that can be useful or information that you weren't aware of. Why would you not want data from any source?
Exactly.
And then you can consider whether or not you're going to use that data or not. So yeah, I'm with you there. We as appraisers need to step up a little bit too. Kathy Harper, thank you so much for being here. If one of my listeners or viewers would like to get in touch with you and pick your brain a little bit, what's the best way to reach out to Kathy Harper?
Well, probably LinkedIn. I'm on there as Kathy Gilbert Harper because that's how I find my old schoolmates, right? When women get married, we change their name. We lost everyone. So it's Kathy Gilbert Harper on LinkedIn. I'm more than willing to help with questions. I will have to say some of them are market driven and I can't answer your question for your area, but I do have connections across the country and I can help find you those people that can answer your questions and be more helpful. If you're reaching out, we want to help. That's how it works. Great. We're all going to work together.
Kathy, thank you so much for your time and being on the podcast today. I know you're a very busy lady, and I appreciate you carving out a little bit of time to spend with us. Thanks again.
Thank you so much for having me, and Happy New Year to everyone.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're ready for a great 2026. I got to figure something out because I just realized it looks like this tree's growing out of my head, and I don't like that too much. It's not a hat; it's a real tree. But yeah, I don't like that impact. But I hope you're doing well. I hope you're making some money. I hope you have a fantastic new year. I hope you've had a great set of holidays, and you're ready to get back into the grind of things. Until next time, I'm your host, Bryan Reynolds, for Kathy Harper. Happy appraising.
The Appraisal Update Podcast is brought to you by Appraiser eLearning.